All right, welcome everyone. We're here to break down the biggest global headlines as January 2026 comes to a close. There's a lot happening, so let's get right into it. It really feels like the world is on edge right now. We're seeing everything from major military moves to political standoffs, and it's all creating a whole lot of tension. So, what's on the docket? First, we're going to jump into the world's most critical flashpoints. Then we'll shift over to what's happening in domestic politics before we wrap things up with some genuinely amazing news from the world of science that you're definitely going to want to hear. Okay, first up, global tensions. There are these really high-stakes situations unfolding in 3 different parts of the world. And honestly, everyone is kind of holding their breath to see what happens next. This slide really gives you that quick, at-a-glance look at the world's main conflict zones. You've got direct military action in Venezuela, a tense diplomatic and military standoff with Iran, and then this really complex situation in Ukraine that seems to involve some personal diplomacy. Let's dig into each one. So the month kicked off with a huge military operation in South America. On January 3rd, U.S. forces captured the former Venezuelan president Nicolas Maduro right in Caracas. He's since been transported to the United States to face charges. And the ripple effects from this? Wow, they were felt almost instantly. The U.S. is keeping a blockade on Venezuelan oil, and that's not just hitting Venezuela's economy, it's creating a potential crisis for allies like Cuba. They're now looking at less than 3 weeks of oil supply left. It just shows you how quickly things can get unstable in a region. All right, let's pivot now over to the Middle East. Tensions between the United States and Iran are really ramping up, and we're seeing pressure build on both the diplomatic and military fronts. This is what a classic diplomatic impasse looks like, right? The U.S. side is demanding a whole new nuclear deal, but Iran, while saying they're open to talks, is flat out refusing to negotiate on its missile program. It feels like they're just talking past each other, and that's exactly what makes this whole situation so precarious. So how is Iran responding to all this pressure? Well, it looks like they're planning a pretty significant show of force. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps is getting ready for live fire exercises right in the Strait of Hormuz, which, as you know, is one of the most important waterways for the world's oil supply. Meanwhile, switching gears to the war in Ukraine, President Trump has made a pretty striking claim. He said he personally asked Russia's president for a pause in attacks, citing the incredibly cold winter weather as a humanitarian issue. But, and this is a huge but, we've only heard one side of the story so far. While the White House is framing this as a diplomatic win, the Kremlin has been completely silent. So without any kind of confirmation from Moscow, we have no way of knowing if this pause is even real, what the terms are, or how long it could possibly last. Okay, let's bring it back home to the United States for a minute because a really critical deadline is hitting Washington, and it could halt federal operations. The clock is literally ticking. Federal funding is set to expire at midnight tonight, and preparations are already being made for a partial government shutdown. The White House has actually started the formal process, telling agencies to get ready to stop all non-essential work. So why is this even happening? Well, it all comes down to a political deadlock in the U.S. Senate. Lawmakers just can't seem to agree on a new spending bill, and if they don't, the funding for a lot of government services just stops. For our next story, we're heading down to Central America. A legal fight over the Panama Canal is blowing up into a whole new front in the economic rivalry between the U.S. and China. So you can see how this whole thing just snowballed, right? It started as a domestic legal decision inside Panama, but now it has totally exploded into an international dispute, with the U.S. and China pointing fingers at each other over who has influence in this incredibly strategic part of the world. Okay, after all that heavy geopolitical news, let's totally shift gears for a minute. Because even with all this tension in the world, it's so important to remember that human creativity and discovery are always moving forward. Let's look at some really cool breakthroughs in science and tech. And just look at this list. It's pretty amazing. We've got discoveries about our planet, like gray wolves in Alaska hunting sea otters, something scientists thought was super rare. On the medical front, a breast cancer vaccine that's been in trials for 20 years is reporting that every single participant is still alive. That's just incredible. And a new scan can spot heart disease years before symptoms ever show up. Then you have this wild stuff from material science, like a way to make aluminum that floats, even with a hole in it, and a device that can grab CO2 from exhaust and turn it into something useful. It's just a great reminder of human ingenuity. And that's the state of the world as we see it right now. For more explainers on the stories that are shaping our world, make sure you like and subscribe. We'll be back with another update for you in 24 hours.